You are on craziest HOA moments. She framed me early and I paid for it, at first. Linda Carver stood on my porch with her phone held high like she was filming a crime scene, yelling that she had video proof and then refused to show it. She jabbed her finger toward my face and repeated the same line for the third time that week. I am the one who decides what counts. Her gray rain jacket rustled as she shifted her weight, and the stack of orange warning tags in her other hand fluttered in the October wind. Behind her, the gate access kiosk for Redstone Meadows Homeowners Association glowed in the early evening drizzle, its camera lens pointed straight at us. I love paperwork and you are giving me a reason, I said, keeping my voice flat and my hands at my sides. Linda did not blink. She stepped closer, her bucket hat dripping rainwater onto my doormat. Someone rummaged through a neighbor's car last night, and I saw your silhouette walking past the guest lot at 2 in the morning. That makes you the only suspect. You hand over your camera footage right now, or I file a formal enforcement action and we tow your vehicle by sunrise. I am a project manager for a tech firm downtown, and I have spent years dealing with people who weaponize process to cover incompetence. Linda was using the exact same playbook, except she was gate access coordinator for an HOA instead of a middle manager at a failing startup. She controlled who got through the automated gate, who got visitor passes, and who got flagged for random parking audits. She had turned that role into a surveillance empire, and now she was standing on my porch accusing me of a crime I did not commit. My finances could not handle surprise fees and tow costs. I had just paid the quarterly HOA dues 2 weeks earlier and my car insurance renewal was due in 5 days. A tow would cost $300 minimum, plus impound fees that stacked by the hour. I could not afford to let this spiral. I stepped back into my doorway and pulled out my phone. I have a doorbell camera, Linda. It records motion 24 hours a day. If you want footage, I will pull it up right now and we can watch it together. She shook her head so hard her ponytail whipped sideways. Your camera is illegal, so your evidence does not count. The HOA bylaws prohibit recording devices that capture common areas without board approval. You never filed for approval, which means anything you recorded is inadmissible. I stared at her. That is not a real rule. It is in the amended enforcement guidelines, Section 12, subsection 4. I wrote it myself last year after the Wilson incident. She pulled a laminated sheet from her jacket pocket and waved it in my face without letting me touch it. The print was too small to read in the dim porch light, but I could see dense blocks of text arranged in numbered paragraphs. This gives me full discretion to reject any resident-submitted evidence that violates privacy standards. The Wilson incident was local legend. A retired couple had installed a bird feeder camera to watch hummingbirds, and Linda had declared it a security breach because it technically faced the sidewalk. She had threatened fines until they took it down. Nobody had challenged her, and the board had never clarified the rule. Now she was using the same tactic on me, except this time the stakes were higher because someone had actually committed a crime. You are lucky I am not harsher, she added, folding the laminated sheet back into her pocket. I could suspend your gate access tonight and make you park on the street until this is resolved. But I am giving you a chance to cooperate. Hand over the footage, let me review it, and if it clears you, we move on. I shook my head. You just said my footage does not count. Why would I hand it over if you are going to reject it anyway? Her smile widened. Because refusing to cooperate is itself a violation. If you obstruct an HOA investigation, I can escalate immediately. That means towing, access suspension, and a formal hearing where you will have to explain why you refused a direct request from an officer of the association. I took a slow breath and forced my shoulders to relax. The trick with people like Linda is that they thrive on panic. The moment you start arguing in circles, they have won, because the process itself becomes the punishment. I needed to stay calm, document everything, and find leverage. Fine, I said. I will pull the footage and email it to the management office. They can decide if it counts. She stepped forward again, close enough that I could smell the coffee on her breath. No, you hand it to me directly, tonight, or I make the call to the tow vendor in 10 minutes. I am the one who decides what counts, not some office clerk who does not understand the security protocols. There it was again. The same phrase, the same power move. I glanced past her shoulder and saw my neighbor Eric standing on his porch 2 units down. He was holding a trash bag but not moving, just watching. Eric was a software engineer who worked from home, and he had complained to me twice in the past month about Linda harassing him over guest parking. He had a better camera angle than I did, because his porch faced the guest lot directly. I pulled out my phone and opened the Doorbell app. The footage loaded in seconds. I scrubbed backward to 2 in the morning and found the exact timestamp Linda had mentioned. The video showed my front porch, the walkway, and the edge of the street. At 2:03 a.m., a figure in a dark jacket walked past the frame, heading toward the guest lot. The silhouette was blocky and moved with a rolling gait. I zoomed in as much as the app allowed and froze the frame. "That is not me," I said, turning the phone so she could see. "Look at the build. That person is at least 6 feet tall and probably 200 pounds. I am 5'10" and 160. The jacket is wrong too. I do not own anything that dark." Linda squinted at the screen, then shrugged. "Silhouettes are not reliable. You could have borrowed a jacket. The point is, you were walking around the property at 2 in the morning with no legitimate reason. That is suspicious behavior, and it matches the timeline of the car break-in." I closed the app and pocketed my phone. If you are basing this entire accusation on a silhouette that does not match my description, then you do not have a case. File your formal complaint if you want, but I am not handing over footage to someone who already told me she will reject it. Her face went rigid. She pulled the portable rolling stamp pad from her jacket pocket and slammed it onto the porch railing with a sharp crack that echoed across the courtyard. "You think you are clever, but you just made this worse. I am issuing a formal notice right now, and if you do not comply within 24 hours, I will have your car towed and your gate access suspended. The HOA threatens to suspend my gate access at midnight tomorrow, which means I will have to park on the street and walk a quarter mile to my unit in the rain. That is the consequence of obstruction." She pulled a blank orange warning tag from her stack and pressed it against the stamp pad, then held it up so I could see the fresh ink smudge. No readable text, just a dark blot that looked official. She tucked it into the gap between my door and the frame, then turned and walked down the steps without another word. I watched her go, then pulled the tag loose and examined it under the porch light. The ink was still wet. The paper was cheap printer stock, and the edges were rough like she had cut it herself with scissors. There was no case number, no signature, no reference to any specific bylaw. It was pure theater, designed to intimidate. Eric stepped off his porch and crossed the courtyard, still holding the trash bag. He stopped at the edge of my walkway and glanced back toward the gate kiosk where Linda had disappeared. "She has been doing this to everyone," he said quietly. "Last week she tried to fine the Johnsons for leaving their trash bins out past noon. She claimed it was a fire hazard, even though the bylaw says pickup can run until 5. I held up the orange tag. "Did she give you one of these?" He nodded. 3 of them. I keep them in a binder just in case. She is going to slip up eventually, and when she does, I want documentation. I thought about the sealed evidence bag I had been carrying under my arm. Inside was a small item I had found near my trash bins 2 days earlier, a torn mailer with a return address label half ripped off, sitting on top of a crumpled receipt. The mailer had been empty, but the label showed a delivery confirmation timestamp from the same week a package of mine had gone missing. I had sealed it immediately and labeled it with the date and location. At the time, I thought it was just litter. Now it felt like a clue. "Do you have footage from last night?" I asked Eric. He hesitated, then nodded. "My camera covers the guest lot. I can pull it and send it to you, but if Linda finds out, she will come after me next." I shook my head. "Do not send it yet. Just keep it saved and time-stamped. If this escalates, we might need it as a second angle." He shifted the trash bag to his other hand and glanced over his shoulder again. She tried to corner me yesterday and intimidate me into deleting my camera footage. She said the same thing she told you, that it violates privacy rules. I told her I would check with the board first, and she got so angry she threatened to revoke my guest passes. That was the second escalation step. Linda was not just pressuring me anymore. She was trying to isolate me by silencing potential witnesses. If she could intimidate Eric into deleting his footage, my doorbell clip would be the only angle left, and she had already declared it inadmissible. The strategy was simple and ruthless. Control the evidence. Control the outcome. I need to call the management office, I said. If Linda is going to escalate, I want it on record that I tried to cooperate through official channels. Eric nodded. Good luck. Let me know if you need that footage. He walked back to his unit, and I went inside. My living room was small and cluttered with work-from-home equipment, a standing desk, 2 monitors, a filing cabinet stuffed with project binders. I pulled out my phone and dialed the after-hours line for Redstone Meadows management. The call rang 4 times before a recorded message picked up informing me that the office was closed until 8 a.m. and emergencies should be directed to the on-call deputy. I hung up and checked the HOA website. The deputy contact number was listed under the enforcement tab, but when I called it, the line went straight to voicemail. I left a message summarizing the situation. Linda Carver had accused me of a crime based on a misidentified silhouette, declared my camera footage inadmissible, and threatened to tow my car and suspend my gate access by midnight tomorrow unless I handed over evidence directly to her. I stated clearly that I was willing to cooperate with the management office but not with Linda personally, given the conflict of interest. I hung up and sat down at my desk. The sealed evidence bag was still in my hand. I opened my laptop and created a new folder labeled HOA Dispute October. I took photos of the orange warning tag Linda had left, the torn mailer inside the evidence bag, and the crumpled receipt. The receipt was from a local hardware store, dated 3 days before my package had gone missing. The items listed were blurred and smudged, but I could make out a partial SKU number and a timestamp. I uploaded everything to cloud storage and tagged the folder with the date and time. Then I opened the Doorbell app again and downloaded the full footage from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., covering the window Linda had mentioned. The file was large, over 200 megabytes, but it saved to my laptop without issue. I scrubbed through it frame by frame, looking for anything I might have missed. At 2:03, the silhouette appeared. At 2:07, it disappeared off-frame toward the guest lot. At 2:12, a second figure entered the frame from the opposite direction, walking with a faster, lighter gait. This figure was shorter, with a distinct rolling motion in the shoulders that reminded me of someone carrying something heavy in one hand. I froze the frame and zoomed in. The second figure wore a gray rain jacket with the hood up. The ponytail was barely visible, tucked under the hood, but the gait was unmistakable. I had seen Linda walk that way a dozen times, always when she was carrying her portable rolling stamp pad or a stack of paperwork. She moved like someone who spent too much time sitting and not enough time stretching. I saved the timestamp and took a screenshot. Then I cross-referenced it with the HOA access logs, which were posted publicly on the resident portal. According to the logs, Linda had used her admin keycard to unlock the gate kiosk at 2:10 a.m., claiming she was responding to a security alert. The alert itself was not described, and there was no follow-up report filed. The timing matched perfectly. She had been on the property at the exact moment she later claimed to have seen my silhouette. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. The pieces were starting to fit. Linda had been walking around the property at 2 in the morning. She had seen someone else, possibly the actual thief, but instead of reporting it or investigating, she had decided to pin it on me. The question was why. If she was just incompetent, she would have filed a generic incident report and moved on. But she was actively fabricating evidence, manipulating the rules, and threatening retaliation. That suggested something more deliberate. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Redstone Meadows Homeowners Association complaints. The results were sparse, but one thread on a local neighborhood forum caught my attention. A user named Anonymous Resident 47 had posted 3 months earlier, claiming that small items had been disappearing from the clubhouse storage closet: cleaning supplies, light bulbs, printer paper. The user suspected internal theft but had no proof. The thread had 6 replies, all variations of the same advice: file a formal complaint with the board, install a camera, check the access logs. I scrolled down and found a second post from the same user, dated 2 months later. Update, filed a complaint, nothing happened. The board says there is no evidence of theft and the items were probably misplaced. But I checked the storage closet yesterday and a whole case of paper towels is gone. Someone is taking stuff and covering it up. The thread ended there. No resolution, no follow-up, just frustration and silence. I closed the laptop and grabbed my jacket. If Linda was stealing from the clubhouse, she would need a way to move items without being seen. The guest lot was the perfect spot, close to the storage closet, minimal foot traffic after midnight, and no cameras except for the ones mounted on resident porches. If she had been making regular trips, someone would have noticed eventually. That someone might have been the figure I saw on my doorbell footage at 2:03 a.m., walking toward the lot. And if Linda had seen that person too, she would have a strong incentive to deflect suspicion by accusing someone else first. I walked to the guest lot on foot, staying under the streetlights. The rain had stopped, but the pavement was still slick and reflective. The lot was small, maybe 20 spaces, bordered by a low fence and a row of recycling bins. The clubhouse storage closet was 50 feet away, built into the side of the community center with a heavy steel door and a keypad lock. I walked over and examined the lock. It was the same model as the gate kiosk, a standard commercial keypad with a card reader and a manual override. The access log sticker on the door showed the last recorded entry at 1:47 a.m. yesterday, logged to Linda Carver. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the sticker. Then I walked around the perimeter, looking for anything unusual. Near the recycling bins, I found another torn mailer, this one wedged between 2 bins like someone had tried to stuff it out of sight. The return address label was completely missing, but the shipping barcode was still intact. I pulled a pair of gloves from my pocket, picked up the mailer carefully, and examined it under the streetlight. The barcode started with the same prefix as the one on the mailer I had found near my trash bins. I sealed it in a second evidence bag I had brought with me and labeled it with the date, time, and location. Then I checked the recycling bins themselves. The nearest bin was half full of cardboard boxes, all flattened and stacked neatly. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it into the bin. At the bottom, partially hidden under the cardboard, was a small stash box, a plastic storage container with a locking lid, the kind you buy at hardware stores for organizing screws and nails. I reached in and pulled it out. The box was not locked. I opened it and found a set of HOA storage padlock keys on a ring, along with a crumpled $10 bill, a half-used roll of packing tape, and a receipt folded into quarters. The receipt was from the same hardware store as the one in my first evidence bag, dated 2 weeks earlier. The items listed were blurred, but I could make out the word padlock and a quantity of 3. I took photos of everything, then closed the box and sealed it in a third evidence bag. This was no longer circumstantial. This was a stash, and the keys were for the storage closet. If Linda had been stealing supplies, she would need duplicates of the original keys to avoid leaving a trail in the access logs. The hardware store receipt proved she had purchased padlocks recently, which meant she had the means and opportunity. I walked back to my unit and uploaded the new photos to the cloud folder. Then I called Eric. He picked up on the second ring. "Yeah? I need your footage from last night," I said. "All of it, from midnight to 3 a.m. And I need it time-stamped and unedited." He was quiet for a moment. "You found something." "I found a stash box in the recycling bins with keys to the storage closet, and I have 2 torn mailers that match the same shipping prefix. If your footage shows Linda near the guest lot or the storage closet, we can prove she was lying about the timeline." He exhaled slowly. "Give me 10 minutes. I will send it encrypted." The file arrived 12 minutes later. I downloaded it and opened it in a video player. The footage was crystal clear, a wide-angle view of the guest lot, the recycling bins, and the side of the clubhouse. At 1:52 a.m., Linda appeared on screen, walking from the direction of the clubhouse with a canvas shopping bag in one hand and the portable rolling stamp pad in the other. She stopped at the recycling bins, glanced around, and then pulled the stash box out from under the cardboard. She opened it, took out the key ring, and walked toward the storage closet. At 1:57, she returned without the keys but with the shopping bag noticeably heavier, sagging in her grip. She put the stash box back, shoved the torn mailer into the gap between the bins, and walked off screen. At 2:03, a second figure entered the frame, a tall man in a dark jacket, walking with a slow, unsteady gait like he had been drinking. He stopped near the bins, pulled out his phone, and made a call. He stayed on the phone for 90 seconds, then walked off screen toward the street. He never approached the storage closet, never touched the bins, and never interacted with anything in the lot. At 2:12, Linda reappeared, walking quickly with the shopping bag now empty and folded under her arm. She glanced at the spot where the man had been standing, then walked directly toward my building. 30 seconds later, she passed my porch. The doorbell footage I had matched perfectly. I saved the file and created a side-by-side comparison using basic editing software. The timestamps aligned within seconds. The rain jacket was identical. The rolling gate was unmistakable. Linda had been at the storage closet during the exact window she later claimed I was the only person on the property. She had seen the tall man in the dark jacket, realized he could be a witness or a suspect for the car break-in, and decided to pin the whole thing on me instead. The logic was cold but efficient. Accuse the person with the weakest alibi, reject their evidence preemptively, and escalate before they can organize a defense. I checked the time. It was almost midnight. I had less than 24 hours before Linda made good on her threat to tow my car and suspend my gate access. The management office would not open until 8 a.m., which gave me an 8-hour window to prepare. I copied all the evidence files to a USB drive, printed hard copies of the key screenshots, and organized everything into a binder with tabs labeled doorbell footage, neighbor footage, evidence bags, access logs, and receipts. Then I wrote a formal complaint letter addressed to the Redstone Meadows Board of Directors. I outlined the timeline, summarized the evidence, and requested an immediate review of Linda's conduct as gate access coordinator. I cited the specific bylaw she had violated, misuse of authority for personal benefit. I attached copies of the access logs showing her 2 a.m. entry, the hardware store receipts, and the photos of the stash box. I kept the tone professional and factual, no emotion, no accusations beyond what the evidence could prove. At 7:50 a.m., I walked to the management office. It was located in the community center, a low brick building with a glass door and a small waiting area. I arrived 10 minutes before opening and sat on the bench outside, holding the binder and the USB drive. At 8:02, the office manager unlocked the door and waved me in. Her name was Patricia, a middle-aged woman with short gray hair and a tired expression that suggested she had been dealing with HOA drama for decades. I handed her the binder and the USB drive. I need to file a formal complaint against Linda Carver. She has accused me of a crime I did not commit, threatened to tow my car, and violated multiple HOA procedures in the process. Everything is documented here. Patricia opened the binder and scanned the first page. She flipped to the photos of the stash box, then the side-by-side footage comparison. Her expression did not change, but she tapped her pen against the desk twice, a small tell that she was processing something significant. "This is detailed," she said quietly. "How long have you been gathering this?" 2 days. The accusation happened last night, but I found the first piece of evidence earlier in the week." She closed the binder and looked at me. "You know Linda is going to fight this. She has been with the HOA for 6 years, and she has a lot of support on the board. If you file this complaint, it is going to get messy." I nodded. "She already threatened to tow my car by midnight tonight. I do not have time to wait for a slow process. I need this escalated immediately, and I need someone to review the evidence before she makes good on the threat." Patricia picked up the phone and dialed an internal extension. She spoke quietly for 30 seconds, then hung up. "The deputy is on his way. He will want to hear this directly from you." The deputy arrived 10 minutes later. His name was Greg, a retired police officer who handled enforcement and security issues for the HOA. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and had the kind of neutral expression that made it impossible to tell what he was thinking. He sat down across from me, opened the binder, and read through every page without interrupting. When he reached the footage comparison, he paused and rewound the clip on his phone, watching it 3 times. "This is Linda Carver," he said, pointing at the figure in the gray rain jacket. "Yes." "And she accessed the storage closet at 1:57 a.m., removed items, and then walked past your porch at 2:12. "Correct." He closed the binder and leaned back in his chair. "She filed an incident report this morning claiming she saw you near the guest lot at 2 a.m. and that you refused to cooperate with her investigation. She requested authorization to tow your vehicle and suspend your gate access pending a formal hearing." I stayed quiet and waited. Greg tapped the binder. "This evidence contradicts her report. If what you are showing me is accurate, she was the one on the property during the relevant time window, not you. That raises a serious question about her credibility and her motivations." Patricia leaned forward. "What do you want to do?" Greg pulled out his phone and made a call. "I need you to hold any enforcement actions related to Unit 42 until further notice. Yes, the one Linda filed this morning. Because I have new evidence that contradicts the initial report. I will brief you in person." He hung up and looked at me. "Your car is safe for now, but we need to verify this footage independently before we take any further action. Do you consent to having the deputy review your doorbell camera system and your neighbor's system?" I nodded. "Yes. Eric already agreed to cooperate. You can contact him directly." Greg stood up. "I will be in touch by end of day. Do not delete anything, do not share this with anyone else, and do not confront Linda directly. If she contacts you, document it and forward it to this office immediately." I left the management office and walked back to my unit. The sky was overcast, and the air smelled like wet asphalt. I checked my phone and saw 3 missed calls from an unknown number. No voicemail. I ignored it and went inside. At 11:30, my phone rang again. This time it was Linda. I let it go to voicemail. She left a 2-minute message, her voice sharp and clipped. "You went behind my back and filed a complaint with the office. That is a violation of procedure. You are supposed to bring disputes to me first, not escalate directly to management. I am the one who decides what counts, and you just made this a formal investigation. Expect a hearing notice by end of week, and expect penalties for obstruction and defamation. You are lucky I am not harsher." I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to Patricia with a short note. Linda Carver called and threatened penalties for filing a complaint. She repeated the phrase about deciding what counts and claimed I violated procedure by going to the office. Please add this to the record. Patricia replied within 5 minutes. Received. Deputy is reviewing your footage now. Will update you by 3 p.m. At 2:15, my doorbell camera triggered a motion alert. I checked the app and saw Linda standing on my porch again, this time with a clipboard and a stack of papers. She knocked 3 times, hard enough that I could hear it from the living room. I did not answer. She knocked again, then held up one of the papers to the camera lens. It was another orange warning tag, freshly stamped. She tucked it into the door frame and walked away. I opened the door after she left and pulled the tag loose. This one had more detail than the first, a handwritten case number, a reference to Bylaw 17C, and a demand that I appear at the management office tomorrow at 9 a.m. for a formal interview. The handwriting was neat and aggressive, with heavy pressure on the pen that left indentations in the paper. I photographed it and uploaded it to the cloud folder. Then I called Eric. "She just left another tag on my door," I said. "Did she contact you?" "Not yet, but I saw her car in the guest lot an hour ago. She was sitting in the driver's seat with the engine running, just staring at the clubhouse." At 2:55, Patricia called. "The deputy verified your footage and your neighbor's footage. Both are consistent and time-stamped. We also pulled the access logs for the storage closet and found 3 unaccounted entries over the past 2 weeks, all logged to Linda's admin keycard. The entries occurred between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., outside of any scheduled maintenance or inspections. We are treating this as a potential internal theft investigation." "What happens next?" I asked. "We are suspending Linda's access coordinator role effective immediately. She will be notified this afternoon. The board will review the evidence at the next meeting, but in the meantime, we are clearing your record of any accusations related to the car break-in. Your gate access is restored, and no enforcement actions will be filed against you." I exhaled slowly. "What about the storage closet keys?" Patricia hesitated. "We are still investigating that. The keys you found match the original set, which means someone made duplicates. We are changing all the locks and conducting an inventory audit. If items are missing, we will file a police report." I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat down and waited. At 4:30, my phone rang again. This time it was Greg. "I need you to come to the management office. Linda is here and she is demanding to see the evidence you submitted. I want you present when I show it to her." I grabbed the binder and walked over. The office was crowded. Patricia sat behind the desk, Greg stood near the door, and Linda sat in the waiting area with her arms crossed and her face set in a rigid mask. She glanced at me when I entered but said nothing. Greg opened the binder on the desk and turned it so Linda could see. "This is the footage your neighbor submitted, along with access logs and physical evidence. It shows you at the storage closet and the recycling bins during the time window you later claim to have seen the narrator near the guest lot. It also shows a second individual who matches the description of the person you accused. Can you explain the discrepancy?" Linda leaned forward and stared at the screen. "That footage is doctored. The timestamps are fake. This is exactly why I said his camera is illegal. You cannot trust resident-submitted evidence." Greg did not blink. The footage was independently verified by 2 separate sources. The timestamps match the access logs, which are controlled by the HOA system, not by any resident. And we found the stash box you are holding in this frame. He pointed at the screenshot of Linda near the recycling bins. The keys inside match the storage closet locks. Linda stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "You have no right to search my property. That is harassment. I am filing a counter-complaint for defamation and privacy violation." Patricia spoke quietly from behind the desk. "The stash box was found in a common area recycling bin, not on your property. The HOA has the right to inspect common areas at any time." Linda turned to me, her face flushed. "You did this. You planted that evidence to frame me. You are the one who has been stealing, and now you are trying to cover it up by blaming me." I stayed calm and kept my hands at my sides. "The footage shows you at the storage closet. The access logs show you entered at 1:57 a.m. The keys in the stash box match the locks. None of that has anything to do with me." She stepped closer, her voice rising. "I am the one who decides what counts. You do not get to come in here with your fake evidence and your fake accusations and destroy 6 years of service. I have worked for this community, and I have protected it from people like you who think the rules do not apply." Greg stepped between us. "Linda, you need to sit down. This is not a negotiation. The evidence is clear, and the board will review it at the next meeting. In the meantime, your access coordinator role is suspended and your admin keycard has been deactivated." She did not sit down. Instead, she grabbed her clipboard and her stack of orange warning tags and walked toward the door. Then she stopped, turned back, and looked at Patricia. "You are making a mistake. When the board sees the full picture, they will understand that I was protecting this community from a security threat, and when that happens, I will make sure everyone knows who enabled this witch hunt." She walked out. The door slammed behind her. Patricia closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them and looked at me. "I am sorry you had to deal with this. She has been getting more aggressive over the past year, but we did not realize it had gone this far." I nodded. "What happens now?" "We complete the inventory audit, file the police report if items are missing, and schedule a board meeting to review her conduct. In the meantime, you are cleared of all accusations, and your record is clean." I left the office and walked back to my unit. The sky was darkening, and the streetlights were starting to flicker on. I checked my phone and saw a text from Eric. "I heard she got suspended. Nice work." I replied, "Not over yet. She is going to fight this." He sent back a thumbs-up emoji and a short message. "Let me know if you need backup." If you are enjoying this story, hit like and subscribe for more HOA drama and revenge tales. The next morning, I woke up to another motion alert from my doorbell camera. Linda was back, standing on my porch with a different clipboard and a wheeled file cart behind her. She knocked twice, then held up a piece of paper to the camera. It was a formal hearing notice, printed on HOA letterhead, with my name at the top and a scheduled date 3 days from now. The charges listed were obstruction of an HOA investigation, defamation of an HOA officer, and unauthorized recording of common areas. I opened the door and stepped out. "Linda, you were suspended yesterday. You do not have the authority to issue hearing notices anymore." She smiled, the same tight smile from the first night. "I am still a member of the board. I can file a formal grievance against any resident who violates the bylaws, and I can request a hearing. You do not get to hide behind the deputy forever." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Linda, you are on my property without permission, and you are attempting to issue enforcement actions after being suspended. I am asking you to leave." She did not move. She pulled a laminated sheet from the file cart and held it up. "This is the amended enforcement guideline I wrote. It gives me the authority to continue investigations even during suspension if the board has not formally revoked my role. And since the board has not met yet, my role is still active." I lowered the phone slightly. "That is not how suspension works. Patricia told you yesterday that your access coordinator role was suspended. That means you have no enforcement authority until the board reinstates you." She stepped closer, dragging the file cart behind her. The wheels squeaked on the concrete. "I am not here as access coordinator. I am here as a board member exercising my right to file a grievance. You cannot stop me from doing that." I kept the phone up. "You are on my property. Leave now, or I will call the deputy and report this as trespassing." She laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Go ahead, call him. He will tell you the same thing I just said. I have every right to be here." I dialed Greg's number and put the call on speaker. He picked up on the second ring. "This is Greg. Linda Carver is on my porch right now trying to issue a hearing notice and claiming she still has enforcement authority. She was told yesterday that her role was suspended." Greg's voice was flat and professional. "Linda, this is Deputy Greg. Your access coordinator role was suspended yesterday by management directive. You do not have the authority to issue hearing notices or conduct investigations. If you do not leave the property immediately, I will file a trespassing report with the sheriff's office." Linda stared at the phone, then at me. Her face was red, and her hands were shaking. "This is not over," she said quietly. "You think you won, but you just made this worse. The board will see through your lies, and when they do, I will make sure you are the one who gets removed." She turned and walked away, dragging the file cart behind her. The wheels squeaked the entire way down the walkway. I ended the call and went inside. The hearing notice was still on my porch. I picked it up and photographed it, then added it to the cloud folder. The language was aggressive and specific. I was accused of fabricating evidence, manipulating timestamps, and colluding with a neighbor to defame an HOA officer. The notice demanded that I bring all original footage, all physical evidence, and all correspondence related to the case to the hearing. It also stated that failure to appear would result in automatic penalties, including fines and potential eviction proceedings. I called Patricia. She picked up immediately. Linda just left another hearing notice on my porch. Greg told her to leave, but she is still claiming she has board authority to file grievances. Patricia sighed. She does have the right to file a grievance as a board member, but she cannot issue enforcement actions or conduct investigations. The hearing notice is procedurally valid, but the charges are not. We will address it at the board meeting. When is the board meeting? Next Tuesday, 6 p.m. in the Community Center Conference Room. You are welcome to attend and present your evidence directly to the board. I hung up and sat down at my desk. The timeline was getting tight. Linda had 3 days to rally support, gather counter-evidence, and shape the narrative before the board meeting. If she could convince even 2 or 3 board members that I had fabricated the footage or manipulated the timeline, the vote could go her way. I needed to make sure the evidence was airtight and that I had witnesses who could corroborate the facts. I called Eric again. I need you at the board meeting on Tuesday. Linda is going to fight this hard, and I need someone who can confirm the footage independently. He hesitated. If I show up, she is going to come after me next. I know. But if we do not stop her now, she is going to keep doing this to everyone. You said yourself she has been harassing people for months. This is the chance to end it. He was quiet for a long moment. Fine. I will be there. But you owe me. I spent the next 2 days preparing. I printed additional copies of the evidence, organized everything into a clean presentation binder, and wrote a short statement summarizing the facts. I also contacted the tow driver who had been scheduled to remove my car before Greg intervened. His name was Ray, and he worked for the vendor Linda had called. I asked him if he would be willing to confirm that Linda had requested immediate action without proper authorization paperwork. Ray was hesitant at first, but when I explained the situation and offered to provide a written statement from the deputy confirming the timeline, he agreed. I will be honest, he said. I have dealt with her before. She calls us all the time for emergency tows, and half the time the paperwork is incomplete or missing. I have been wanting to push back, but the HOA contract makes it hard. If you have proof she violated the process, I will back you up. I sent him a copy of the access logs and the deputy's notes, and he confirmed he would attend the board meeting if needed. On Tuesday evening, I arrived at the community center 30 minutes early. The conference room was small, with a long table at the front and rows of folding chairs facing it. The board members were already seated, 5 people, 3 men and 2 women, all middle-aged and wearing business casual attire. Linda sat at the far end of the table, her face calm and composed. She had the portable rolling stamp pad in front of her and a stack of documents arranged neatly in folders. Eric arrived 5 minutes later and sat next to me. Ray, the tow driver, came in last and stood near the back. The board president, a man in his 50s with glasses and a tired expression, called the meeting to order. We are here tonight to review a grievance filed by Linda Carver against a resident regarding alleged evidence fabrication and obstruction. Linda, you have the floor. Linda stood up and pulled out the first folder. She opened it and began reading from her notes like she was in court, her voice steady and professional. On the night of October 14th, I observed suspicious activity near the guest lot. A resident was walking the property at 2 a.m. with no legitimate reason. I approached him the following evening to request cooperation, and he refused. He later fabricated evidence by manipulating doorbell camera footage and colluding with a neighbor to create a false timeline. This is a clear violation of HOA bylaws regarding evidence submission and defamation of an officer. She pulled out a second folder and held up a printed screenshot. This is the footage he submitted. If you look closely at the timestamp, you can see inconsistencies in the font and alignment. This suggests the file was edited using basic software. She passed the printout to the board president, who examined it briefly and set it aside. I raised my hand. May I respond? The president nodded. Go ahead. I stood up and opened my binder. The footage was verified independently by the deputy and by the neighbor who recorded it. The timestamps match the HOA access logs, which are controlled by the association's system and cannot be edited by residents. I also submitted physical evidence, including a stash box found in a common area recycling bin which contained duplicate storage closet keys and receipts matching recent purchases. All of this evidence points to Linda, not to me. Linda slammed her hand on the table. That stash box was planted. You had access to the recycling bins, and you had motive to frame me after I issued enforcement actions against you. I stayed calm. The footage shows you at the recycling bins. The access logs show you at the storage closet. The receipts show you purchased padlocks. None of that can be explained by planting evidence. Linda pulled out a third folder and held it up dramatically. I have my own evidence. This is a complaint form signed by 3 residents who witnessed your harassment of me over the past week. They confirmed that you followed me, recorded me without consent, and threatened me with legal action if I did not drop the investigation. I glanced at Eric. He shook his head slightly. The complaint form was a fabrication. The board president looked at Linda. Can you provide the original signed forms? Linda hesitated. They are in my office. I can submit them tomorrow. The president frowned. We need to see the originals tonight if you are using them as evidence. Linda's face flushed. This is exactly the problem. You are taking his word over mine because he has a fancy binder and a neighbor who is covering for him. But I have been serving this community for 6 years, and I have never once lied or manipulated evidence. If you believe him, you are setting a precedent that residents can attack board members with impunity. Ray stepped forward from the back. Excuse me, I am the tow driver who was contacted by Miss Carver on the night in question. She called me and demanded immediate action without providing the required authorization paperwork. When I asked for the work order number, she told me it was an emergency and that I should bypass the normal process. I refused and contacted the deputy to verify. That is when I learned the enforcement action had been suspended. Linda turned to face him. You are lying. I followed protocol exactly. Ray pulled out his phone and opened his call log. I have the timestamp of her call and a recording of the conversation. She told me to tow the vehicle immediately or she would find another vendor. That is a violation of the HOA's vendor agreement, which requires proper authorization before any action. The board president looked at Linda. Is this true? Linda did not answer. She pulled the portable rolling stamp pad toward her and slammed it on the table like a judge's gavel. This is a witch hunt. You are all turning on me because one resident decided to make me the villain. But the real issue is that your security protocols are weak, and I was trying to protect this community. If you want to punish me for doing my job, fine. But do not pretend this is about evidence or fairness. The president set down his pen. Linda, the evidence submitted by the resident has been independently verified. The access logs, the footage, the physical evidence, and the vendor testimony all support his account. We are going to vote on whether to remove you from the board and terminate your role as access coordinator. Do you have anything else to add before we vote? Linda stood up and grabbed her folders. She turned to face the room, her expression rigid. You are all making a mistake. When the truth comes out, you will regret this. She walked out, dragging the file cart behind her. The door slammed. The board president looked at me. We will vote in closed session and notify you of the outcome within 24 hours. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I left the community center and walked back to my unit. Eric caught up with me halfway across the courtyard. That was intense. I nodded. She is not going to let this go. Probably not, but at least the board saw the evidence. The next morning, I received an email from Patricia. The board voted unanimously to remove Linda Carver from her role as access coordinator and to suspend her board membership pending a full investigation. We are also conducting an inventory audit of the storage closet, and if items are missing, we will file a police report. Your record has been cleared, and all enforcement actions against you have been voided. 2 days later, the inventory audit was completed. 17 items were unaccounted for, including cleaning supplies, light bulbs, printer paper, and a case of bottled water. The total value was estimated at $300. The board filed a police report, and a deputy from the sheriff's office interviewed Linda at her home. She denied any wrongdoing and refused to allow a search of her property without a warrant. The police did not pursue charges, but the HOA board issued a final written reprimand and removed Linda from all leadership roles. She was also banned from accessing the storage closet and prohibited from using her admin keycard outside of normal resident functions. The board voted to install security cameras in the storage area and to require dual authorization for all after-hours access. Linda sold her unit 3 months later and moved out of the neighborhood. The new gate access coordinator was a retired accountant named Margaret, who instituted a transparent logging system and published monthly access reports for all residents. Eric and I stayed in touch. He later told me that Linda had tried to rally support for a counter-lawsuit but could not find an attorney willing to take the case. The footage, the access logs, and the physical evidence were too strong. I kept the evidence binder on my shelf as a reminder. The sealed evidence bag with the torn mailer, the receipt with the blurred hardware store logo, the screenshots of the access logs. All of it pointing to the same conclusion. The person who decides what counts is not the one with the loudest voice or the most authority. It is the one with the proof. I hope you got a laugh out of the chaos.